Good evening, everybody, and welcome to One World, One Blood Bowl, number 48. It is my hypothesis, it is my thesis, my belief, that we live in a golden age. Just being the grumbling idiots that we are, we're refusing to recognise it. People will look back on this and say that time was Blood Bowl's golden age. So I've bought, obviously, to represent truly for once the world of tabletop Blood Bowl. I brought together three lovely people representing the entire world as they do, um, coming from entirely English-speaking Northern European countries. So truly a global vision will be before you this evening as to the state of Blood Bowl in this great world of ours. And we, I think, have the right to judge whether we are in a golden age, as well as basically to hold my hand as I dip my tentative little toe back into tabletop Blood Bowl. In 2 weeks, I've got to captain the Barbarians against some people that are really good at Blood Bowl, and the Welsh national team. So, that's an interesting way to throw myself back into Blood Bowl. There will be others there. There's going to be Scotland, there's going to be Ireland, there's going to be Malta, there's going to be England, and there's going to be my Barbarian team. Now, my Barbarian team is packed with quality. Candlejack, the lovely Candlejack, who joins us this evening. So, hello, Christian, how are you?
I'm fine, very good. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Absolutely excellent. Lovely to have you here. He's also coming to Loughborough with me, so he'll be literally holding my hand and my beer as we take on the rest of the nations.
If I'm holding your beer, I'm drinking it, so just be warned.
Well, you'd be welcome. So I want him to tell me, obviously, how we're going to do that. The host of that, I want to talk a little bit about it, I'm sure he will, is the lovely Jock representing Scotland.
Good evening, PC. Well, technically not at Home Nations. I am the tournament organizer and completely unbiased, except I'm cheering on the Barbarians.
Oh, yeah, because there's a
Sorry,
Scottish
I said that
twang to your
already.
voice. Surely it's anyone but England in your home.
I don't quite subscribe to that kind of story these days. I've matured somewhat. I've got grey hair and moved out of Scotland, so yeah, I'm not quite anything but the English. But it would be nice for anyone but the English to win. I'm not going to lie. Yeah.
Obviously, moved out of Scotland in a desperate bid to live into your late 40s and possibly 50s. Something unknown
And
up
for
there in
better weather.
Scotland. Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, just to point out who else is joining us before we just start chatting in general, let's bring them all in right from the start. If you've watched all of the One World, One Blood Bowls, you will know the handsome, tiny little Viking, representative of all of Scandinavia, which effectively is one place. There's only about 300 of them. Is Hargrim. Welcome to the show again, Hargrim.
Thank you. Pleasure to be back as always.
How's your Blood Bowl, my friend?
It's going pretty well. I played the Chilean Team Cup a few weeks ago with the rest of Team Ladonia going strong. We ended 7th in total out of 47, I think it was. So we had a pretty good showing there, and I played the Danish Open last weekend as well, which went pretty well. And once again, I beat Seabros, who still can't manage to take a win off me in tabletop. So I'm going to keep rubbing that wound in
I
for
wonder if the
him.
weird thing for him is playing someone who he can look in the eye rather than the kneecap. I wonder if
Oh
that
yeah,
weirdly
very
weirds
weird
him
for him.
out.
It must be very weird for him.
Now, you made an interesting choice in your life in not coming from the great nation of England,
Well,
nor Wales, nor,
technically, I'm
nor Ireland, but you're sort of a bit Scottish, weren't you, for a bit?
me.
Weren't you?
No, I'm English.
So, how have you ended up being a Scandinavian? And hence why you're not at the home nations when the rest of us are? We've got German
So
coming.
my dad is English and my mum is Danish.
Right.
We moved to Denmark when I was very young, and I've grown up with dual citizenships. So I haven't. I've been back to England a few times, but I've lived in Denmark my entire life, and that's why I'm basically just Scandinavian with an English accent and some cultural aspects.
Which is handy for me because, of course, famously I speak one language, that very well, admittedly, but none others at all. Sorry about that. So, I want to talk about Blood Bowl in general. Now, the Home Nations is coming up, and we've got some lovely Blood Bowl going to happen there. And it's quite interesting, of course, just before it's happened, we've seen the big nerf to Underworld. So let's start with a nice, easy opener for 10. We talked about this a little bit on the last show. Are we happy with the nerfing of Underworld? Did it need to happen? And has it been a bit too drastic? I mean, they now cannot swarm. What's the point in having snotlings if you can't swarm them? CJ, are you happy to see that happen?
Kinda, yeah. I think it was needed to tone them down. Some people were exactly requesting this change. I'm not quite sure if that was the right call, if it cost them too much, or if it's not even enough. I've heard different opinions about that. I mean, something is still nice to fill gaps, to move through somewhere and just be annoying. But I think like having this average one or two people less on the pitch from the start, that's going to hurt them because they will not be able to protect their value players as well as they did before. But we will see how people will adapt, and I'm pretty sure like the next few months it will be a bit of up and down, and towards the end of the year we will see where they actually stand when people adapt to a new playstyle they need to develop, and how people are starting to play against them now. So it's always going to be an up and down. But
So
yeah,
I mean, to me, that's I think where you ended was where I would have begun. In that I think it's the key changes. How you face them now might be different.
yes,
Because as you said, they just don't have as many numbers to shield the pieces you really don't want people getting into.
yes.
And
But on the
whilst
other
all
hand,
the numbers add up the same, they'll have the same bench, they can do the same fouling, they've still got the
yeah,
cheap pieces. They can't put as many in your face at once.
yeah.
So that's
But
kind
on
of
the
where you
other
change
hand,
things.
you don't have as many special targets on your offense drive to actually get rid. So the bench, ironically, will last longer now.
Yeah.
So we will see what happens. Maybe you will not need the bench as much anymore. Maybe that's going to be another key aspect of playing them. Just like
I'm going to be interested to see
keeping you
what
snobbing
happens
from the
with
start.
the goblin snotling ratios. Are we going to see those altering? It used to be
I
that
guess
6
so.
snotlings was default. I wonder if perhaps dropping to 3 or 4 is enough.
I guess people will take a few more goblins now, but we will see. I've never played Underworld much. I still have to get them painted to actually start playing them. Now I'm late to the party as usual, but we will see.
Well, I mean, we have a snotling secret to reveal in a minute, don't we? From our own internal team dynamics. I think we will talk about that a little bit. But first of all, Hargrim, how do you feel about the snotling plague that Blood Bowl has faced? They have been getting some very good win rates. Did that need dealing with? Was that a fly in the ointment that needed plucking out?
I think the change to Underworld has made the game a lot healthier and a lot better because instead of just being able to foul and play for removals and high variance gameplay that's going to end up working anyways, to changing how they actually fundamentally need to play is very, very healthy for the game. I like the change. Do I think that they're competitively viable? Probably. They still have a gutter runner, they still have some good tools, but they're not as insane as they were before. So I think it's a very, very, very healthy change for the game.
I mean, I'm very tempted by that, except it's mildly inconvenienced me personally, which is always obviously it sets my mind against them. Jock, how did you feel about it? And can you reveal anything from the home nations? Has it done a lot in terms of builds or people's thinking?
Yeah, I've got a world exclusive, but before we get to that, I mean, in some ways, I think, yes, obviously, if you look at the bold win rate, it says Underworld needed sorting out because they were significantly ahead. But I would contend that there's maybe a factor there, probably a key factor in my mind, that tournament organizers have mistiered them for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
I think the idea that if you kind of give them all the tools and you can have your biased refs and your dirty player and your bribes and have a star player as well because everything's so cheap, then actually that's the problem, not swarming necessarily. And I think you've started to see tournament organizers move slightly. I'm not saying it's the be all and end all, but I think it's a key factor. I mean, for example, Andy Davo, prior to this nerf, put Underworld into tier 0, which is the first I've seen, by reducing the number of skills and cash to try and sort of mitigate the Underworld's
Yeah, I'd seen
machine,
that too,
if you
Joe.
will.
Again, lots of attempts to deal with the problem. As long as I've still got a mutation on my gutter runner, juggernaut on my rat ogre, maybe extra arms on my thrower, and tackle on my vermin, I I don't need 6 skills. 4's plenty. I can still kick things in the
For
face.
sure.
I've still got the numbers. I've still got that money for my biased ref, my bribe, my keg, as well as 3 free rolls. I mean, I
Yeah.
I've seen them go down to tier 0, lose a couple of skills, and thought, yeah, not bothered. But now to lose
Yeah.
swarming, I mean, we already got swarming limited to 3. That was a nerf on Underworld. And then they started creeping up the tiers still, and that was another sort of minor nerf to Underworld. And now we've had, I think, the death of swarming. Is it going to be enough? I mean, certainly I'm minorly interested in them again. Whereas when first the Barbarians sat down, 8 top Rhine coaches, and we said we've probably got to have some Underworld because that's the meta. Literally none of us wanted to coach them. Nobody went, I'll do that. Everyone was like, oh God, I suppose I should if you won't, but do I have to?
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I agree. Like the swarming nerf is important, and I think it's a phased move that perhaps sees Underworld gradually be rebalanced in a kind of controlled way, if you will. It certainly affected home nations in terms of selection. So I can reveal that in the bowl half of the tournament, not a single Underworld is represented by any of the 6 teams.
Wow!
So it's completely gone. And I know that Team Scotland had an Underworld pick, and as Swarming come out, we went, nope, we're not taking Underworld, and moved. And in the Home Nations Open, the 4-man version, a 4-coach version with 18 squads, we have 1 Underworld out of, what is it, 60 odd teams. So, it's interesting to see that actually that change in swarming has completely turned everybody off. I guess the question is that a premature sort of leap for the exit before it's a bit early? Because Underworld's still going to be a good nation.
Christian,
but
is this an overreaction? I mean, what a change!
Yeah, it's interesting, but to be honest, I think that is kind of reasonable for this night because people still don't know yet how they actually play, how they actually feel. So, like, if you go into hey, this is a high competitive environment, I want to kick some serious ass, I take a tool that I know how it's working. Another tool that looks promising but might screw me over. So,
I wonder if they still had access to, say, Varag, whether we might see them a little more. But we've also taken all the best stars off them.
Yes.
Well, Ripper Underworld seems to be trending a little bit. Both Thulian and Rick took Ripper Underworld to NAFC, and by all accounts had a good weekend. He's not quite as quick as Varag, but he'll do a job.
He will do a job.
I mean, there's also the Glart Underworld build, which is very interesting, which allows for a lot stronger one-turning, which allows you to play for the variance in the first half. So you just go on defense, foul everything in the first half, then play for the one-turn and 2-1. Easy peasy.
I mean, I've always found the problem with Glart is that he's completely shit. I mean, he's very intimidating. He looks like he's going to do a job, but he just never does. Never gets it done. I don't fear him, and I don't want to field him.
Okay, what should he get done in your opinion, and what is he failing short of?
I mean, I want him to be punching his weight. He should be terrifying if I'm buying him. I find he's best as a massive diversion. It takes them a lot to get him controlled, to get him down, to get him away to the side. So it might be a piece that pulls 2 or 3 pieces, which I can use, but that's still incredibly expensive. What he doesn't do is, I think, punch his weight. He is not a killer.
As Hargrim just said, he is very good at increasing your one-turn option, and that alone can make a draw to a win, or a win to a loss to a draw, or even more if you then get the momentum and stuff.
I mean, I coached Underworld to a couple of tournaments because I wanted to find out how it was done. Won some stuff and then thought, right, I want to stop doing that. This is very boring. And interestingly, I heard other coaches. I mean, the fabulous coach Misspelled Tree has said exactly the same, that she's bored now of Underworld, despite winning lots of things. I've done that. Ugh. And I absolutely agree.
I haven't won lots of things, but it is dull. I'm taking them to Bilbao, and I've played 21 games with them, and then they'll just go back in their box. That's that. Underworld done. Never mind the nerf. Pre-nerf, it was like Bilbao is going to be my last Underworld stint with them, because they just aren't fun to play.
No, the first tournament I went to with them, I think I came 3rd or 4th. I missed winning on a 1 in 9 against Salty McCut. We talked about it on a One World One Blood Bowl. And I guess about half the time in that, because it was the first time I'd ever coached Underworld, I forgot to swarm. I'm not sure it's devastating, is what I'm kind of getting round to there.
half the time, but the other half you swarmed. So
what I
what's
fear is if I
there?
don't swarm, what have I got left? I mean, I've still got snotlings. So what you say to me? Well, they're fantastic 4-1 turning because they can fill in little holes to get my pushing incredibly easy on a 1 in 36 dodge. So they're really good 4-1 turning. What else are they good for? They're brilliant against 1 turning because they've got sidestep, so I can place them on the line, and it's very hard for anyone to 1 turn against me. And then I've got really squishy stuff, and I've got less of a shield to keep it safe. So everything that points towards me thinking they're probably only going to drop 5%, the way they only drop 5% is for me to not play Blood Bowl with them. And they become the ultimate withdrawn offense team.
Yeah, but you weren't playing Blood Bowl with them in the first place when they had swarming anyways.
I could a little bit because they had swarming. I could isolate some players and then pressure the ball a bit. And only if it went wrong would I pull back and say, okay, I'm not playing Blood Bowl. Now, I think I just don't play Blood Bowl. The person, I'm not discussing who was going to coach Underworld in the Barbarian team and decided not to, is because the collective opinion was pretty much universally that now the way to win with Underworld is going to be to just never try and play Blood Bowl. Run away, let them score, see if you can snipe a piece or two around the edges as they do, and then get your 1 turn done, and then get your safe drive done from behind whatever crumbles, and then go as late as possible and get your second touchdown and win that way. I think it's going to be effective. I think it's going to be incredibly dull. So will we nerf them back into a more reasonable range with other teams? Yes, but maybe at the cost of any fun at all. Am I being too gloomy?
Not really. I don't think they need re-tiering. I think 6 skills is still more than enough for them. And the lack of swarming is going to change their playstyle anyways. And they've got dirt cheap things. I think the thing we need to look at is how we build the rosters. And we need to start changing out snotlings. Instead of maxing out on snotlings, you're going to need more goblins. Because now you're looking at a problem of, oh, if I go down too many players too quickly, I'm going to be in trouble. And with too many snotlings on the pitch, you're going to get in trouble pretty quickly. So maybe like running 1 snotling on the pitch for 11 men's is
Yeah,
fine.
I kind of agree. And then keeping the snotlings back for either doing a 1 turn or preventing a 1 turn.
Exactly. So like roster maybe 3 of them to take you up to 16 and then have goblins for the rest.
Yeah,
and then
maybe
you're
so.
fine. Then
as
you're
you
just
said-
basically playing old Underworld.
Okay, so we had that change, and I wanted to see how that landed. Do we think in general though it's been? I mean, Cindy Pie Whistle. Anyone got a problem with her being made a megastar?
No, I think
No,
it's fair.
I think the cost of her is just she's just too cheap to just like chuck on the pitch and cause mayhem. So why not, recognize it that's a problem.
Yeah, I think if Bomber Dribble Snot belongs there, she does too. I just don't see a difference between them.
It's the same ballpark. I still think that Kaboom is a way better special rule than All You Can Eat, but still, it's just like the teams she gave the bomb play to, like Emerson's with a bomber or Dwarves with a bomber who's like just silly.
Yeah, I mean, I know other people that would say the other way, Christian. That I mean, Kaboom. There's a fair chance anyone that catches it goes off 50% anyway. That it definitely goes off is definitely better. I agree. It's a fabulous skill. But the fact that if you're up against a bind, she can suddenly throw 2 pies. I mean, that can be immense if you've got within, say, 3 spaces of something you really want to bomb. To double bomb it in a single turn.
Yes, sure you can, but it's 2 chances to knock yourself out. It's the send-off chance there. It's still something different than like having the threat of the bomb being chucked to your ball carrier, and you don't catch it, it goes off. You catch it, it goes off.
Yeah.
It's just like this one roll in your offense drive. It's like a wizard with a few tries. It's just like, let's see what happens.
Yeah, certainly it was very devastating in its brief reign on Fumble before it got reined in as a megastar. So if and when it starts dominating Blood Bowl 3, that's going to be interesting too. But yeah, I think Cindy, no one else really worried about. Was there anything in the latest errata and rule changes, because some of them were just rule changes, that any of us thought was negative at all?
Not even remotely. I think every single change that was in the recent FAQ has been absolutely healthy for Blood Bowl. Guard being changed to not working on fouls.
Yeah.
Good change.
I mean,
Underworld
I do feel a
losing
tiny bit
swarming,
for
good
Black
change.
Orcs. That was kind of their thing. But to give them their thing, it gave everyone else just way too much. So they need a new
Yeah.
thang, maybe.
Yeah, so
I'm all for
maybe
Black Orcs having
maybe
a bigger thang. And a thang.
maybe
And then
Black
obviously
Orcs.
goblins with their buff with passing access.
Okay,
I'm sure the goblin coaches were cheering.
it's the fly in the ointment. Goblins are still shit. But yes, it was a tiny
Be gracious. There is
help.
something for the goblins. Stop
Well,
complaining.
it's amazing there wasn't another nerf for them, because there has been in every change for the last 17 years has seen
Somebody
goblins
change
get
topic,
worse.
please.
Yes, we can. So we all agree it was all good changes to a good rule set. Because this is, and here's the point of the whole episode, where we've taken this long to build up to it. Could you feel it coming, Christian?
Yes, it is tingling already.
That was the change that has brought us to the realization that all these little tiny changes are great, because pretty much things are wonderful. We live in a Blood Bowl golden age. Ah, this is my thesis. Do you not agree? Let's be the first. Let's not wait to look back 10 years from now and go, oh, that was a Blood Bowl golden age and I lived in it. Let's know it. Let's own it. We live in a Blood Bowl golden age.
I think that we live in possibly the best age for Blood Bowl. We've got Home Nations coming up, which is a great initiative for practice. We've got lively tournament scenes everywhere in Europe and the States and Canada and Australia, New Zealand. Like it's really has become one world, one Blood Bowl. But we saw 2,300 coaches at the World Cup as well. Like it was an insane amount of people. This really is the golden age of Blood Bowl, and especially after this FAQ, I think we are generally going to see a tendency of more people coming into the tournament scene, more tournaments being brought up every single year, even in small countries like Denmark. And we're going to start seeing numbers that are going to be healthy for not only the game, but also for the community.
I absolutely agree. So there you are. Hargrim's with me. He's drunk the Kool-Aid. Christian, this is Blood Bowl's golden age, and we are living in it.
I think in some aspects, yes. Of course, you can always find something. But no, I think it's as Hargrim said, the scene is booming like it never has before. There's so many people coming new into the game. We have different platforms where people can play online. We can play tabletop. You basically can't throw a stone without hitting a tournament on a weekend somewhere. Actually, maybe it's even a bit too much. Like, for example, Home Nations weekend, we have a big 2-day tournament here in Munich. We have one in Berlin, and then Home Nations. And so like there's 3 tournaments.
I'm aware.
Like
I've stolen you away from it. It's one of the huge German ones in the calendar, isn't it? And I've stolen you away to be a barbarian, which I'm very flattered by. And we've got Jay Lee flying in from America. I mean, that's amazeballs as well. But
yeah, it's just like I'm a bit afraid that sometimes it might be a bit like too many tournaments being clumped into the same space. So I feel like there was still an team cup, which was huge, I think, from what I heard. And then the week afterwards, there was the tackle zone. I don't know how many people went to the tackle zone. I guess there was not that much attendance.
Yeah. 10 squads at tackle zone, but I think one of the feedback pieces that Dan and Cor got from that was a lot of people wanted to go to the Games Expo and didn't want to commit 2 days of playing Blood Bowl. So they've not confirmed it yet, but there was chat that they're going to change from a team tournament to 2 one-day individual 3-round tournaments so that someone can go to the Games Expo, play Saturday or Sunday, and then visit the expo on
so you can do one or both and visit either day. Variety.
Which based on attendance makes perfect sense, really.
I mean, if I drop down out of hype mode briefly to discuss this, I mean, there's always a way to get a tournament wrong, to put it on the wrong date, to find that something is overshadowing you slightly. If someone's just done a team event, people perhaps don't want to go to one the next weekend. They might go to one in 3 weeks or a month, because then you can try and keep a team together and arrange 2 dates at once. People will do multiple events in a year, but they won't necessarily do them back to back. Which is why when we had the Home Nations and the Team England were going to organise a practice event, it made so much sense for those two to merge. Do I think there's the players for enough tickets to have made both happen? Yes. But if they wanted to be in exactly the same time in the calendar, that just doesn't make sense. It makes sense. Get one up and running and either expand it or then put the other one at a different time in the calendar. See what's happening there.
We sort of had that problem at a tournament here that I'm hosting later this year, that we had put it on the same weekend as the KTC, and it was a team tournament that we wanted to run as like to bring international coaches into Denmark to come and play. So there was going to be some overlap and it was going to cause problems. Turns out one of my co-organizers couldn't actually make that weekend, so we had to push it a week anyways, and are now actually seeing some pretty solid numbers for international coaches, which is going to be fantastic.
So but now it's the week after the UKTC?
Yes.
So that's the same weekend as the German Team Bowl, which is also like
yeah.
So which
I mean, is it interesting? I think certainly in the UK context, but actually it sounds potentially in a European context as well, that actually large TOs probably have a duty to the community to get their heads together at some point and sort of say, well, here are our anchor tournaments, like NAFC is always the first weekend in May, January for Welsh National, UKTC's moved about a bit with the York University messing them about. But realistically, like it feels like we should be trying to spread these out and be sensible about it. Because you look at in the UK, the first part of the year is just jam-packed full of events. And then post-Euro Bowl, it's just, a desert, if you will.
Well, let's. I mean, there's also other factors in that. Of course, it's when the tournament organisers have their own will to do it. It's things tend to get organised in the latter quarter of the year. It's around some of the people who go, okay, we've run 2 successful ones. Shall we do one in the winter? So there is a second phase of organising for that time of the year. Plus, also when there is a big event, a big tent pole like the Euros, a lot of people want to throw one out and test teams and test rosters and get people together and organised and match fit, ready for that event. So afterwards there's it's who wants to lie in the wet patch, isn't it? People they've thrown themselves out there. But yes, I think this is good times. Numbers are up. Everyone I talk to tells me about their club numbers being up. Every tournament I talk to tells me about their tickets selling out, unless there's a reason why they're not. There's the London tournaments. One guy said, there's a tournament I do. It's got it got really good numbers. It's got a really normal vanilla rule set. There's another one I do that people really like because of the flavour, and that sells really well. And there's one where we put sort of weird and crazy rules on, and for some reason that one doesn't sell as well. And I thought sometimes the market is telling you a little something there, and sometimes you're in someone's shadow, sometimes it's a tweak on the rule set. But most tournaments seem to be selling out in big numbers. There's huge numbers coming into the game. The video game, Blood Bowl 3 is in a bit of a state, but it's starting to limp towards something that's kind of playable. So is it going to bring in the numbers that, say, Blood Bowl 2 did into the game? I don't know if it's ever going to do that.
I guess so.
There's still people coming in.
Yeah.
This is a golden time. It's a golden age. Goldenness is raining down upon us, and I guess I just want that golden shower to be out there, spread as wide as possible onto as many people as we possibly can. I think it's
with or without a shower cap.
Either way. I mean, I just think in this golden age we should shower that goldenness onto as many people as we know and bring them into the game. I mean, I feel sorry for people still, walking around with a ruler when instead they could be looking at a beautiful grid. I just think it's getting to the point where the game is excellent. Now, as we all agree, this is a halcyon times. We're in the fields of Elysian. Another thesis I would put forward is that every rose has its thorn. Every cowboy sings a sad, sad song. There's obviously little tiny tweaks this is necessary, or else we wouldn't be able to see the beautiful perfection all around us. Some nonsense talkers have talked up that there'll be a 2024 rule set. There surely can't be, or the rumour mill would be much fuller with it by now. But there might be a rule set in the not immediate future. So what is the one or two little tiny flies in the wonderful ointment that you see? One's already been raised in the chat that I would agree with. The dwarves at the moment. They're kind of a bit and particularly in tabletop, they're just not very tempting. So to me, it's fine. It's fine they're not up at the top of the wheel, but I'm just a bit sad about it. And obviously goblins are shat on from such a height, and one tiny little buff doesn't do it. What for you would be your next thing to talk about? What needs addressing in this wonderful world of Blood Bowl, Hargrim?
I think there are two main issues for me with the current rule set. The first one is that they explained it to be a more simple version of the old 2016 rule set, and then they made passing a lot more complicated than it needed to be. They can definitely make some changes to passing that will make it easier to understand. I have veteran players at tournaments like Danish Open that are still asking how the hell wildly inaccurate works, because it's so complicated for no apparent reason. And the other change I would
I'm a
make...
Dark Elf coach and I still don't know how to do it either.
No, I mean, I confess I sort of get it, but there's times I can make a mistake. I heard someone put through a really good idea that if you really want to keep it, and let's face it, I don't know why you would, but if you really want to keep it, at least it should be a modified 0 or less is wildly inaccurate. But if it's a positive number, it just never can be, because that at least makes more sense than the fact that sometimes a 1 is a fumble and a 2 can be a wildly inaccurate. I mean, you're like, sorry, how? And someone just says maths, and I look stupid. And they're right, of course, but maths isn't a very great answer. It's not a fun answer normally.
No.
Okay, so that's one. What else?
The other change I would make is stop the implementation of race-specific special rules, because it just makes everything so much more complicated. Like you're going away from standardized rules that anyone can take. So,
but if I can't
things
turn up
like
with a toy you don't understand, how am I going to win?
Exactly. Like if I'm playing Amazons, and some rookie coach is going, "Oh, this is my first game against Amazons," and now I have to sit and explain how hit and run works, and they're just going to be confused, and they're not going to understand what the hell is going on. It's not fun for them.
But my
This game is
wins.
at the end of the day, this game is fundamentally about having fun, sitting down across someone, and enjoying an hour and a half, 2 hours of pure enjoyment. And if rules are getting in the way of that, it's just.
It's only one rule they've got to learn, and 2 more for the star I've hired.
Yeah.
For that one team.
For that one team.
Yeah.
Times
Now
30?
you have to multiply that by the extra 30 teams that are there,
So
and all
every
the
day's
star
a
players
learning
that are there.
experience. Why is that not a good thing?
Because it steeps the learning curve of the game, and it makes people disinterested in wanting to learn more. When you look at a mountain of rules you need to get over, you're going to be daunted by the task more than going to think, I'm going to climb that mountain.
Well, I mean,
If
you
I look at a
particularly
mountain,
are,
I'm not going to
because,
go, I'm climbing that.
I mean, you start with a much bigger task than the rest of us, so I understand that. I understand your fear. If you were, say, Christian's height, that you'd probably just step over it. So everything is relative. Yeah, okay, so there's genuinely some big problems there, but it hasn't stopped Blood Bowl weirdly, and at times kind of hard to explain why, entering a golden age. So perhaps that's where we're going to end up. Christian, what's the problems within this beautiful, perfect times that is Blood Bowl right now?
Well, with the rules that okay, I get the point of Hargrim. It's yeah.
We've overcomplicated passing when we said we were going to make it central
Or
again.
rather, for me, it's more like a general thing. The rule set itself is not very consistent and sometimes too confusing. Things are written in a way that we will think, oh, that's meant like this and this, and then they clarify it in a different way, but then the same wording on a different rule has a different effect. So, yes, there's a rumor about this new rule set, and some people claim that they know that it's in the works. They don't reveal the sources. But if it's really coming, I sincerely hope it's more or less the 2020 rules with all the FAQ and errata stuff, and that in a condensed and actually consistent way, so we can have a good starting point again. Because I have quite a lot of experience with reading the rules and interpreting them, but it's so many corner cases, so many different special things and errata stuff that is changing stuff again. I implement stuff and then I just wipe it off my brain again, because otherwise I would go crazy.
No, I had a chat with someone much smarter than me to try and understand this point, which is Krista, and he was talking about pegging. I think he said it was, or was it flagging? I think the idea was that you put a sort of a term on something, and then it stays on that as you go through the rules, so that this is always a case of when you do an action, it has this flag or peg.
You using keywords consistently, and then when you read declaring, they know what's happening. When you read performing, you know what's happening. And I guess it's not as bad as it seems. And it might be that because like people like me, we are used to the old rules and we know how it used to work, and so in our minds, yeah, that's how it should work. Maybe it was intended differently, and that might add to the confusion.
And I hear with the 2020 rules, it's like they went sort of 2/3 of the way through doing that pretty well, and then just sort of went and kind of stopped.
Yes, everybody said. I'm not quite sure what happened there, and don't want to assume. It's just like it is just not what it should
Friday,
be. In
3
my
o'clock,
opinion.
wasn't it? And someone just sent it.
Maybe something, or like, says, we have like 3 more comments from some proofreaders or something. I just ignore it and just push it live or anything.
Okay, so basically and I did a joke in there to get us to the point I was trying to get us to. When you talk about consistency, we're talking about in the fundamental mechanics of how the rule set is expressed.
Yes.
So that it can be used, interpreted, aligned, programmed, all of those good things.
Yes, and easily understood by new coaches, or more easily. And because now it's like, you read the rule book and basically the things you read on this, and this page are wrong. That is meant differently, and
because at the very least, if we're having an errata, and that's going to, the constant flood of erratas and rule changes will at some point be tidied up into a tidier rule book.
It would be great.
At the same time, a very minor change that would actually be major. It may not be to read it. It might not be something that leapt out at the average reader, but would be a major change for people that have to referee rules or code them or enforce them or implement them, or even just understand them. Is to get those fundamentals of how everything interacts with each other in a uniform way of expressing it, with a flag that says it's this action or this moment in the turn, repeated all the way around the rules. So if everything could just get really solidly pegged like that, that would definitely help. I get it. Jock, what is your missing jewel within this beautiful golden age?
Well, if I don't get too lost in the weeds, and actually let's have a look at how the golden age continues to grow. I mean, briefly, philosophically on the rules, I'm with Christian on making rules more simple and consistent to understand. That there isn't sort of like this skill turns off on a blitz and this one doesn't, like all sorts of weird stuff like that. I also think passing in general, and in fact, the play style has narrowed in 2020. It's all become kind of bash, foul, meta orientated.
The idea the lovely Raven was in the chat earlier, and I mean, this I was going to cycle way later in the conversation, so perhaps we will when I want some advice about other tournaments I'm going to. I'm going to Thrud, and I've got sort of really 2 options, which is High Elves or Chaos Dwarves, both of which I love and don't coach very often. So going somewhere where I want to genuinely have fun and not necessarily care about how competitive I am, great time to take a race like that. Am I just kidding myself by taking anything elfish though? Isn't this? It's the age of bash.
No. Not yeah, it is the age of bash. Although interestingly, I was in Malta just last week. Actually, I've had 3 tournaments on the bounce, and Malta was my last one, and I took High Elves. And I had a blast playing High Elves. I mean, I play Dark Elves, obviously, and I'm an elf coach by trade, if you will. But actually, they could pass pretty well. I loved it. It was awesome. So it's not necessarily dead, but it definitely feels like the 2020 rule set has kind of narrowed play style options in a way that isn't immediately obvious as to why they would do that. But that put that to one side. One of the things that I'm keen for is I do hope that the rumors of a 2024 rule set are more than rumors. I think if you look at the actual data of the number of coaches registered in NAF, it's about 2,600 in 2016. And I've got it on a separate laptop, otherwise I could share my screen in that way. But actually, it just shows a spike trend like that of number of coaches. So up in 2019, we were just shy of 5,000. And if we ignore the COVID years, the trend just keeps going like that and that up the way. And so actually, I think a new rule set to not just tidy up the rules, but maybe introduce new concepts will continue to invigorate the game and bring new players into the game.
Well, I mean, I love a nice graphic and a nice statistic. So let's have a little look at this, which is the NAF games, just a big raw number as a bar graph, nice and simple for everyone to understand. You know me, I'd much rather it was a Venn diagram, but instead it's a bar graph showing just the number of games being played between 2017 and 2024. Obviously, that is, we are less than halfway through the year. So in 2017, from 2018 and 2019, I felt the tabletop game was going well. If you look at that, that's a nice steady growth graph before COVID. I felt we were getting more tournaments. Those tournaments were filling out more. They were selling tickets quicker. And then COVID obviously slapped us on the arse. I'm amazed we even had that many out in public. And if you look, it's because the online purple variant is still taking up a huge chunk of that. And then, of course, we get Blood Bowl 2020 released, and COVID starts ending, and we start getting, well, it's still ongoing, but it's still happening, starts to ease, and people start to go back to things. And suddenly the growth is huge. We go instantly back within a year, almost back to the pre-COVID numbers. But then we push on beyond that last year. We've gone from 36,000 classic Blood Bowl matches in 2019 to 51,000. That's almost 50% on top in 2023. So there is a huge, huge growth in the numbers, which COVID obviously kicked in the face. But I think we've recovered from that, and we keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, if everyone, and that's, of course, the number of games played. Everyone tells me, tournament organisers, that tickets are going like that. So there could be more games played if we had the capacity. NAFC sells out, despite the fact that people then return their tickets because they've bought them a year in advance. Those always sell out. Even some Scottish people are doing something that far, north of the wall. And that sold out in about a day, didn't it, Jock?
Mulligan's, the Scottish NAF National, was released this morning at 9 o'clock, and I was coming on here to promote getting your ticket, but if you haven't already, it's too late. They're sold out.
Thrud goes within a day, UKTC goes in a couple of days.
Coaches.
Tickets just going like hotcakes. Even Dimmy G is going to run a tournament. And in these climates, people are going to go to that. So despite there being some big problems, I mean, Goblins are in a bit of a state. Underworld are presumably coming back. If they drop 5%, that's only going to put them equal with Amazons. It's not going to drag them way down. If they drop 10%, they're still going to be very competitive. So they are going to be less dominant, but they're still going to be there. No one thinks passing is exactly right. I think for long-lived teams, they actually get a bit vanilla when you can have exactly the skills that you want and there's no randomness to it at all. So I'm not saying it's a perfect game. That's not my thesis. My thesis is we live in a golden age. We've got numbers booming up despite all of those problems. We seem to have someone moderately sensible now in charge of Blood Bowl. Games Workshop seems interested in making money off it, which means even if it's not this year, there should be a new rule set at some point. So what's driving this golden age, which I don't think we're poised to take advantage of as well as we could? And what could any of us do about that? That's my next question. Why are we seeing what we're seeing? Where are they coming from? Like I said, Blood Bowl 3's not bringing them in. Blood Bowl 2's been long dead. Why are people coming to Blood Bowl in the numbers they are?
Isn't Blood Bowl 3 bringing people in? I thought it was. Do we have numbers about that?
Not in grand terms. I mean, it's got a bit bigger since crossplay in the new season was released.
Yeah.
But today, the 24-hour peak for Blood Bowl 3 is 614. So,
It's in the 30 worst reviewed games ever released on Steam.
Well, it's still publicity. No PR is bad PR.
Well, I mean, that's a lovely saying. How true it is in the social media age, I'm not so sure. Ask some of the cancelled people. I'm sure there's some things that, for example, well, I'm not going to name them, but you can all think of the celebrities and some things they perhaps would say weren't that good PR for them. Hargrim, why is this admittedly wonderful, but annoyingly incomplete, frustratingly wrong, unbalanced, constantly changing, evolving, overcomplicated, noob-unfriendly game in a golden age? What the hell is going on?
Gonna answer this with a bit of a complicated answer and take you on a bit of a journey.
Good. We're supposed to be smart here, and I've done a lot of piss taking already. So let's do the smart stuff now.
When I started Blood Bowl back in 2016, I had no clue what the game was about. I had no clue what I was going to expect. I was just told by a friend and local Games Workshop employee, hey, you should try this game. I think you're going to love it. I played one game and I was hooked. And I haven't quit since. I went to my first tabletop event in 2019 after playing Leagues for 3 years, and I was hooked immediately. Now, I got into the tabletop scene from a Games Workshop employee, which admittedly doesn't happen as much over here now. But what we are seeing is a trend of people like Seabros, who streams in Danish, who says, oh, I'm going to this tabletop tournament. And then Danes come to his stream and say, oh, when is that? And then they turn up
He's the Danish
to
Andy
tournaments.
Davo.
He is the Danish Andy Davo. So we're seeing a trend of like online players that are coming to tabletop tournaments for the first time, or local leagues that are sort of cropping up across the country as well. And it's these like small communities that end up becoming a part of the bigger Danish community that end up seeing a trend in how many players we got. Last year we broke the record for the biggest Danish tournament ever at 63 coaches. This year we were 53.
It's about a fifth of Denmark.
Pretty close. It was certainly like a third of the active Blood Bowl community in Denmark, which was
It's amazeballs. So why now? It's not the best the rules have ever been. I'd argue late 2016 there was a really tight rule set I could sell to someone as a an accurate experience they could really get into and understand. These are changing. There's all sorts of good stuff, but there's some stuff that's still very random. There's some stuff that still pisses people off. There isn't even uniformity of agreement on whether 2 rerolls a turn is a good thing. It is, by the way. On balance, it's complex. Why are they just coming in because gaming is having a day and we're getting something from that? Christian, you're nodding.
So we were saying.
After you, Christian.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we'll come down to Jock.
Okay. Well, I think it's probably several aspects as usually. Yes, I think gaming is getting more and more popular. It's more like, at least in Germany, it was like playing with miniatures that you painted and you have like elves up over the pitch. It was like 15, 20 years ago, you got like very odd looks. Now it's like, hey, what's this game? It looks fun and stuff. So yeah, I think it's getting more and more like acceptable, or just like people are getting more used to it. We have more streamers that are just like making advertisement for the game basically, and yeah, the rule set it's okayish. It's not the greatest. I think there are games out there that have way more balance and more smooth rule sets. But to be honest, most people don't go into the game and say, "Hey, I like this rule set. I play this game." It's more like, "Hey, I have a mummy that can punch a goblin in the face. How cool is that?"
Right. Okay.
So so it's just like this like most of it's like we love the fantasy theme, like Lord of the Rings stuff, wow, dragons doing things. That's why people played Roman fantasy for a long time. It's like all these hero things, and then hey, I have like 11 little heroes on the pitch, and I can do funny things with them, and it's and have some tech aspect. It's just appealing to a lot of people, I think. Just like as I said, as Hargrim said, you play this game, and it's like just the idea that this elf is now dodging through your orcs and just going there with the ball, and in return, the troll just smacks his mate in the face. The idea is just so much fun.
So it's the old-fashioned. I mean, the appeal for Blood Bowl in the first place to me was obviously complex, but part of it was this is incredibly stupid, and yet at the same time I can take it ridiculously seriously.
Yes.
Whilst laughing at the stupidity, and I can live in that duality existence of taking the piss out of myself and the game whilst tryharding at it.
And a lot of people are very relaxed about the game, and what here forever the Blood Bowl community itself is super welcoming, super friendly, at least especially compared to other games where it's much more competitive and stuff like cheating or bad behavior is much more present. And I think this is just like over the last year we have gained momentum, and now it's just starting to steamroll. I guess this is just like a natural thing to happen with all this. It will go down at one point again because it's a pendulum. But
I mean, as Oda Joy says, it's something about the stability of the universe as well. Yes, it's stupid and it's silly, and the rules might be changing, but the concept is very easy to understand. take the Tolkien world, put it into a steampunk future, and let them play American football.
Yeah.
And then put that into a chess-like system. So you're not measuring stuff, but there's, it's just 3 forward, 1 to the side, whatever. It's
And
a simple that part of how this is going to work is instantly grabbable by a human brain.
yes, plus chancing your luck and just having the dice and like a aspect. It's just like it gives you. That's why people go to Vegas. Roll dice and see what happens.
So
It's
it's the strength of the concept of Blood Bowl, Jock. Do you agree? Is that why we're in the golden age?
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, I was nodding along with Christian. I think if we try and focus too hard on what's wrong with 2020 because we are engrossed ourselves in the game and we have opinions on what we think is right and wrong, I think we miss the central tenets to Blood Bowl. And it's 2 things, really. One, it's fun. If you can sort of get over the learning curve of how do you do a 2D block and what's this on a 4+ dodge and all that sort of stuff, the actual game itself is just fun. And then coupled with that, you have an amazing community, that welcomes you in. I mean, I was a
Everyone
PlayStation
says
Blood
they
Bowl
have an
2
amazing
coach.
community, though.
No, it's true. So I got into Blood Bowl 2 because Facebook advertised me that PlayStation had Blood Bowl, and I was like, that was a game I played briefly as a 12-year-old in the 90s. I was like, oh, that's cool. I'll wait up for 3 weeks without sleep. I'm going to buy myself a PlayStation 5, and I'm going to buy Blood Bowl 2 for $5. Eventually got involved in leagues in PlayStation, and then one of them said to me, hey, do you want to come to Thrud? I was like, well, I've not got any stuff. Yeah, don't worry, just turn up. We'll sort you out. And so I went down to Swindon, having never met these people in real life, and had an absolute blast. Bought myself a set of Dark Elves in the charity Thrud auction, and it was. I'm not necessarily sure whether I would have felt this way about any other tournament. I like to think of Thrud as the Glastonbury of Blood Bowl, and I just had the most amazing time. I enjoyed the game. It was ridiculously good fun, but it was the people as well. And I think those are the 2 core elements. And then if you chuck in the sort of hand grenade of Alicante, where you've got 2,300 coaches, all kind of en masse from around the world, having the most incredible festival, because it was nothing to do with the Blood Bowl on the pitch, but it was the fact that we were there together, celebrating this game that we love, hanging out with each other, meeting new people, having the most amazing conversations about elves doing ridiculous things or orcs doing crazy things to elves on a pitch. That's the thing that's important, not that passing's fucked.
And getting Andy Davo selfies. I mean, that was important.
Yeah, and spend 10 of your hard-earned euros on an Andy Davo picture. Highlight of my World Cup. So yeah, for me, it's 2 things: fun and the community. I've played just over 100 games now, so I'm still a relative noob. But in that period, I can honestly say I've only had 1 game where it was round 5 in my first NAFC, where the guy was just one of the most obnoxious people in life, and it was a terrible experience. But aside from that,
well, I mean, remember, we might play again in the home nations. Oh no, you're not playing; you're organising it. So
I know. I'm reffing.
Maybe
So yeah, you need to slip me the €10, not Davo.
I mean, I'm going to do a whole show about this, actually. Episode 49, the next one is going to be exactly about this, about our journeys into Blood Bowl. 3 people, younger players who've come into the sport through the hobby, through Blood Bowl 2. And I want to ask them about just their journey in the last 5 years, where it's taken them and what they're now up to and what's drawn them in those particular directions. Because there are people out there that are just, coming into Blood Bowl right now, and I want them to know, there's all sorts of ways you can be part of this community. But that's been the story as well for you, Jock. So you've ended up staking presumably quite a bit of cash and your own reputation and your sanity and happiness as a human being, as well as what all of us think of you, on quite a high-profile tournament that you're running. Your first ever one.
Yeah.
That's
my
very
first
stupid.
tournament.
Why are you doing that?
I like flights of fancy. I organise stuff for fun. I used to have an adventure travel business where I would take 18-year-old students who hadn't ridden a bike since they were 12 and get them to ride 300 miles to Paris, whilst trying not to break femurs. Occasionally that didn't happen, and a few air ambulances were called, but it was fun. So yeah, I mean, without doubt, I think one of the things that's quite interesting, and I feel like there's a blog piece to be written about it from a TO's point of view, is you do take financial risk. I mean, I didn't start this.
Only take the piss if it's true. That's
blindly. No, for sure. But actually, what actually gave me the confidence to get going with this event was obviously I came up with the idea of watching One World, One Blood Bowl, and then I had a conversation with Cor after his election. Congratulations, I've got this idea. What do you think? And he was amazingly receptive and welcoming. Again, he's an absolute gem of a man and an ambassador for the game. I've played him 3 times across the board. And I don't think I've laughed as much with anybody else as K-Fog. He's just fantastic. And through his support and then speaking to the other captains of the national squads, they were keen for it. Everybody was like, this is a really cool idea. So that gave me the confidence to start. But yeah, I'm absolutely thrilled that 120 coaches are descending on my old university in a couple of weeks' time from as far afield as America and Germany and Malta even. We've got a bowl squad and an open squad coming from Malta as well. So, yeah, I'm thrilled. I mean, I love playing the game, but I'm more excited about this, just being able to put this together.
But it brings me back to my hook again. You're not an idiot. As you said, you have some experience in organising things, in event management. You are financially on the hook. You would not have thought this is going to work had Blood Bowl not been in this golden moment, this golden age. As I said before,
sure.
that is the golden shower is descending on us all. We get to go to the tournaments we want. We get to be into team events. We get to organise things. We get to play beautiful Blood Bowl against people from all over the world. How do we capitalise? How do we move this forwards? How does Blood Bowl get richer and stronger? When all these people are coming in, despite Blood Bowl 3 being a sack of shit, despite Fumble being a zillion years old, it comes along. But Fumble is always going to be there. You're never going to get 1,000 people through Fumble. What Fumble does is it gives people somewhere to go, to practice, to play, to explore, to meet other people, to try different forms. I mean, it does all sorts of good stuff. But I'm not sure Fumble is your frontline recruiter. That was Blood Bowl 2, did a lot of that. Blood Bowl 3 might do a tiny bit, but at the moment, goodness me, no. So they're coming in from other games. They're coming in from other formats. We've heard from other people talking about how we don't cross-pollinate. People don't leave Blood Bowl. We're a cul-de-sac. Once you're here, you've no future anywhere else. And that's why Games Workshop don't love us. So how do we get people to take that turning and come into Blood Bowl? What do we sell them?
Maybe I'll start for this, because I've been thinking about this a lot, obviously, having dipped my toe in the water. And certainly I took a calculated gamble with the tournament, being completely open. I was prepared to put £1,000 of my own hard-earned cash into making this work this year on the premise that it was going to work forever. But I think there's a couple of core things that I'd like to see. And actually, it's just kind of come about with the NAF elections. And I'm now thinking, actually, NAF needs to sort itself out. It's ridiculous in terms of how it's run. The vast majority of the money that's kept in membership goes on postage of silly dice. And that's crazy as a financial model. I think the other thing as well that will help the game and the community grow is cross-pollination of community. So we've got NAF series, which tends to kind of geographically link in quite a small tight group, like, for example, the Welsh series, the Scottish series, of all these kind of small tournaments to encourage local communities to go together. I've put together a paper for Stim, and I've got to share it with Topaz, who looks after the series. And the name it actually comes from Stim. He liked the idea of the meta series, and what I'm proposing is that at the moment tournaments can only live in one series, but actually why not have them live in multiple series where it's appropriate? So, for example, the Welsh National is the crown jewels in the Welsh series, but actually, why can't it and shouldn't it be part of a national series of Scotland, Wales, and NAF C?
Cornish and someone in East Anglia call it the limited gene pool series.
Indeed, and blow that up, into a bigger picture. There are 7 NAF nationals across Europe. Why are we not putting that in a series and having a European champion to encourage? Not necessarily that you have to go to all 7 to be able to compete, but the idea that these should be linked to build the community. And because where I have the most fun is when I meet people. It's not necessarily the Blood Bowl. I mean, as I said, I've just come back from Malta, hosted by Jean and his guys. He picked me up from the airport. We had a blast all weekend, and I'll probably go back there. I'm delighted to be being able to buy them a beer when they turn up in a couple of weeks' time. And it was that experience itself, not the Blood Bowl, that that was enjoyable. Now, obviously, not everybody can travel extensively. I'm in a fortunate position with no children and gainful employment, so I can spend my hard-earned pennies on this. But where we can encourage that cross-pollination within our community, never mind from out with the community, that would be an interesting step.
Well, I mean, one thing I'd say to sort of totally counter that, I do agree. I mean, I think it's great if you go and play in a tournament and you meet someone like me or Purple Goo or CJ, and you maybe get a glimpse into some the higher levels of Blood Bowl, and they might talk about a series they're in and why they're there or whatever. But also for you, that can just be you're just playing a game and you're having a weekend playing Blood Bowl and you're done. I also think as we go bigger, we also need to go smaller. Down in Bromley, where I went to pick up a couple of easy tournament wins. I'm kidding, the lovely people of Bromley. I happen to get lucky every time I've been there. One of the things they've done, which I think is really interesting, was they had a tournament that was just for younger people. I think it was under 18s or possibly even under 16s. And they found they've even got a league now. They can support a league for younger people. I think it's fine sometimes to say this is, we'd rather this tournament was for newer players. Actually we want to hold a tournament and we're keeping this one for people that have played less than, 5 NAF tournaments or less than 100 games played or something. I don't mind the idea of stretching it in those directions at the same time. So as we web together, as we get stronger, deeper tournaments, let's also get broader base in terms of what can it mean to be a tournament, and exactly who you're asking to come along. Obviously, the first thing importantly to do is to check that it's going to be financially viable. If you say, okay, this one is only for people over 45 that are all bald and only have a right arm, then you're probably not going to get the numbers you need to make that tournament viable. Doesn't mean it's not a great idea to serve that community, but it doesn't always have to be done. So yeah, can we go bigger and smaller at the same time, Jock?
Oh, 100% agree. Sorry, I kind of I'm always kind of big picture and look at where we can sort of stretch things, but 100%, to be able to go to that direction, you also need to take care of the grassroots, if you will, of bringing people in and bringing them along, because actually you don't get people to travel to different tournaments unless they kind of start to fall in love with the game in their local backyard. So yeah, 100%. There's no challenge for me there, and I think it's a question of how you support that end of the spectrum as well as kind of help them kind of go on a journey. In that sense of 100%, yeah.
Hargrim, how's Scandinavia with particularly the limited gene pool there? I mean, just in terms of mass numbers, and then you insist on being in these little villages or countries or whatever it is you call them to make it even harder. Do you get any of the variant Blood Bowl? Do you do gutter bowl? Do you do street bowl, sevens? Does that happen, or do you just not have the numbers for it?
It actually does happen as part. So we run something called the Danish Masters series, which this year has been approved as part of a NAF, like an official NAF tournament series.
Great.
We actually have like 2 or 3 sevens tournaments a year as part of the Danish Masters. So we do play the variants as well. We have spoken about doing gutter bowl, street bowl, like all of those other variants to see if they can work, but no one's really played them as of yet because of time constraints or personal life problems or that sort of thing. So I think like the variants, we do get them. They're not as popular, but they are still popular enough that that the events can be hosted.
Well, I mean, there are some variant events in the UK, particularly though the home of sevens seems to be America. And I get that when I talk to my good friend Sol, who is sort of the best in the world at sevens, so, tallest dwarf. He talks about how in America, because there's such distance between events, that people are often coming in on the Friday, having something on the Friday evening like a sevens event just makes it that better value. You've travelled further. It's a bigger deal to have gone that far. So it makes perfect sense to me why sevens would flourish there. I mean, I have had some fun occasionally playing sevens, so it's not the worst variant of Blood Bowl. But I wonder if, again, I've never thought Blitz Bowl is the right way to grow Blood Bowl. No one really seemed to like that sort of rule set, that version of it. Maybe sevens might be the way to have a bigger variety out there. It's interesting, if you look back just briefly at that graph, we can see that, sadly, I think I'd use the word sadly. I don't know, I've never tried it, maybe not. Someone, feel free to rage at me in one of the many ways that One World Blood Bowl gets its feedback. Obviously, if you're on YouTube, do press the dislike, the like, just write a comment, do anything. Make a smell. Apparently, the algorithm just likes that. But if you look at the gutter bowl, it's the dark pink number, and it's really not troubling the scorers, is it, since its release? in terms of variant, there's a fair amount of sevens played, and the other big chunk, of course, was the online. Interestingly, that did fine after the pandemic, dying off a little bit this year, maybe. So perhaps that was a phase, that real sort of online naffness that maybe is easing up a little bit. But you're seeing a little bit of beach bowl played and street bowl, but the gutter bowl, it's there, but really it's sevens that's dominating the big noise in terms of what else is around. So perhaps there is still a gap in the market. There are all these variants that get launched. None of them seem to have really grabbed everyone's attention as a viable Blood Bowl alternative. Is there any one that you think is the one that you would play? CJ, I know you host the Dungeon Bowl. Does it still have Dungeon Bowl as its final, or you've been involved with Dungeon Bowl, haven't you?
No. The Doc Max is hosting it.
Okay.
But it still had. I go there, and I was in the final last year, and yes, it's still using Dungeon Bowl as for the final for the tournament win and for the best stunty, and I think also like for the wooden spoon. There's also
Okay. And is it? I mean, have you seen it played? Have you got a view on Dungeon Bowl? Does it work? Is it a thing?
well, if you just like something very random and very silly, then yes, it's just a lot of people think it should not be part of the Dungeon Bowl because you play 5 rounds of competitive regular Blood Bowl, and then in the final, it's most of the time it's more like a coin toss to see who wins, who get the ball, and in the final where I was, I had like a 3-2-2 to win it and failed it, and then I lost the game. But it was against Siggy, a very very good coach, so it's more than a deserved win. But still, it feels like very random. So
I mean, I'm sensing at the moment I don't feel any of the variants are really. I mean, I think sevens has a place, but outside of that, they exist, and you might get the odd person saying let's do something, but nothing's really seizing people's minds. Any of you want to disagree?
I've heard from a few people that Blitz Bowl that they used it to introduce kids to the game because it's more simple. And
like sweet cigarettes, yes.
Yeah, so I've never played Blitz Bowl, but it seems that it's working for some people to introduce people to the game. So why not?
I think the key to growing the community as is actually to keep doing what we're doing. Like, we've seen this boom simply by doing what we're doing. Hosting tournaments, being a good community, introducing and welcoming new people into the community. And it's a very, very small minority that doesn't actually uphold these values. Which, I mean, obviously it's a shame that there are those few individuals, but they're sort of unavoidable in any community. I've been a part of the competitive Warhammer Fantasy community here, and I've played against some right bellends, but I've mainly played against nice people who actually made it an enjoyable experience, while, creaming me on the board, but being nice to me face to face and being nice to me in person.
Yeah.
So here we have four. I mean, I'm not going to presume our sexuality, or nor necessarily that we're all cisgendered, but I'm going to take a bit of a risk and say 4 white males standing in front of beige backgrounds is one of the things that we're doing right, trying to get more diversity in Blood Bowl, he said to the white male beige backgrounded group he'd assembled. The obvious possible growth I talked about a lot on Blood Bowl is still a very male hobby. Where are the women? Is that one of the changes we're going to see? Is a more diverse Blood Bowl if the Golden Age is really a thing?
This is a touchy subject for a lot of people.
Is it just?
I think this hobby in particular, at least from my observations, is that it is a very male-dominated hobby. I can't speak for the rest of the world, but I know that in Denmark that there has been problems in the past 10 or so years with people like me who like to play with toys in the way that I do. Like, it's always been seen as a bit weird, a bit odd, and so a lot of people don't really get into it, and a lot of women feel gate-kept from it when they actually do show interest. And that is a problem within the community, and I think that is also a problem within the Blood Bowl community. is that I saw a post, I think it was a month and a half ago, on the Blood Bowl community Facebook page about whether or not, if someone wanted to use specific pronouns, whether or not we should do it. And as someone who, is not okay, I'm gonna say this right now. I'm bisexual,
Yeah.
so I'm not on the regular spectrum. And for people to gatekeep in this sort of way it doesn't sit right with me.
I mean, I wasn't trying to out you before, but I knew, and I wasn't going to talk about it without you wanting to open the can of worms, as it were. I'm kind of confused as to why anyone wouldn't use a pronoun that anyone wanted them to, just out of politeness. I mean, what war are you fighting? Really, it's a game. Just let's get on with playing the game.
And that's the thing, is that I find that a lot of these, maybe it's less of a problem in Blood Bowl and more of a problem in Warhammer 40k, Warhammer Fantasy, at least here in Denmark, is that people have a hard time talking to women the second that they share a mutual hobby. It's like, oh my god, this person actually shares a hobby and they're not a man. What am I supposed to do? Help, panic.
Crazily, the empathic part of me also wants to say, and until fairly recently, this has been quite a safe space for them. Nothing has happened that's really confronted their worldview. They've been able to be in a hobby like Blood Bowl and not have to deal with diversity at all. But actually, just the rich diversity of our planet nowadays has made that not tenable going forwards. So even if we're not out there actively trying to bring more diversity into Blood Bowl, it's just going to happen because people are hiding who they are and what they've always been about a lot less. And they want to do that in the game space as much as they do anything else. Jock, what do you feel about this? The diversity of Blood Bowl, is it one of its strengths heading forwards, or is the homogeneity actually what's bringing people through the doors?
Well, I probably don't know the answer to that rather philosophical question. I mean, I think diversity in and of itself is potentially a good thing. If we're going to continue our golden halcyon days of Blood Bowl, I think more Blood Bowlers is more good. And I don't care whether they're female, male, young or old. And actually, for the game to last and, for the next few generations, if we want to be that far-sighted, I think young people are vital to the game as much as females. And I certainly find I mean, obviously, I'm a white bloke, so I don't necessarily have the same challenges that other people do. But I find the community welcome, and I would always have a chat with a young lady if she wants to chat Blood Bowl. And wants to play.
And I'm sure she'd be delighted at being called a young lady, Jock. I mean, here I have to be very careful about tone of voice, because if I use one of my usual, obviously being funny and ironic and inappropriate tones of voice, this can sound terrible. But I do love playing with a young person. I love them in Blood Bowl, but in a very not Michael Jackson way. It makes me happy to see it happen, that young people are here enjoying a game I like. I like talking about it. I like hearing their ideas. I like seeing in them what I used to be excited about. Ha ha ha! I've got a chainsaw. Oh, my gutter runner can score in a single turn. It's somehow it's a lot less toxic in the eyes of a 12-year-old than it is in a 45-year-old man chuckling as they cut you in half. To me, that's a lot weirder. So, whilst trying to be really careful about how I say it, yes, absolutely, more children in the hobby is a good thing. And the more we encourage that and make it a safe space for them to be. And listen to me this evening. That's on me to be inherent to know that there are times that my sort of humour isn't okay. If I'm sat at a tournament, who knows what's on the next table? Well, I should. I should look around. I should be aware of the company. And when there's kids and things playing, I should be, responding to that. And I genuinely try to. So I think we could have, again, that variety where sometimes, you can look around and go, hang on, I'm playing in a tournament with kids here, and we need to be mindful of that, because having them have a really good time, whether they win or lose, and their parents feel that's a safe space for them to be at, is really, really important to me.
Funny thing is,
two things. I'm sorry.
Sorry,
I was going to say two things that I pick up that excites me about the game is we got a young chap, Matt, who plays with his dad in our PlayStation League and now our tabletop league. and he gets thrilled at fouling the hell out of stuff, and it fills him with glee. And then the other one is Nafsi with is it Stig, who turns up with an army of school kids, and they just have a blast all weekend. Like that, for me, it brings back memories of when I used to go and play in chess tournaments when I was sort of 12, 13, 14, in the same way. And I think it's just fabulous to see. So, any teachers out there that have got the willpower and the staying power to kind of bring an army of kids to a tournament, I salute them.
Yeah, amazing. Because, I mean, first of all, they've have to have explained to that many children how Blood Bowl works. And I think that's an incredible thing that they've done right there, because you're taking the extension span of a child and explaining something as complex as Blood Bowl. That's a Herculean task, so incredibly well done. And it also means those are kids that are really interested in having fun playing it. And that is an incredibly humbling experience to sit alongside, as well as to occasionally get beaten by. Thank goodness I have avoided the BBC beaten by children shirt. What other community could happily don a BBC shirt and not think this has any other meaning? Oh, the wonderfully joyful, sheltered life of a Blood Bowl coach.
The fun part is that when I went to Bleed Bowl in Ireland, I think there was like 10 or so kids that were playing there as well, and they were tagging along with their parents. I played one of them, and my job was not to try and win the game. It was to try and make sure that they had an enjoyable time. Because, that's generally how I approach the game, is as long as we both had
also,
fun.
because you often don't win, so, I mean, don't target that. That would be ludicrous.
There is also that fun. There is also
I don't target sleeping with Angelina Jolie. I don't.
No, but seriously, like the most important factor for me is that as long as the person sat across me had fun, nothing else matters. The result doesn't matter at the game. And it's especially important if it's someone who is a lot younger than me. And
when
being
we ever play
quite
Hargrim,
young,
just remember, I can only have fun by winning.
Well,
All
tough
other
shit.
forms are impossible. See, that's the one thing I'd say, is that if it's a competitive game, that will always come first for me. If it's a non-competitive game, yes. The priority is, particularly in a younger person, that they're having fun, that they're enjoying the game. And I will even jeopardize a win. If the win doesn't matter to me, then it doesn't matter to me. If I'm not going to win the tournament, then at that point, really, this person having a good laugh and me having a good time doing that is absolutely much more important. If I still need to win, though, then I'll win. Once it's safely secure, then I will still say, okay, at this point, I can start explaining things, I can help you a bit, whatever. But I'll try and reach that point as soon as possible if it's still competitive. Because I am a munchkin, I still need to win. Christian, these golden days. Heading forwards, we're all hoping there'll be some new rules. One thing that got mentioned is the gnomes. How are you on yet new races and yet new things? It seems to get people excited now. I see you looking a bit sad, but I saw the gnomes come out and thought, oh my God, really? And then I went on Facebook. Now, that's not somewhere I go lightly because it's Facebook, for goodness sake. But people seemed really happy and really excited about painting them. And anything that energizes the base is a good thing, isn't it? Aren't you and I in our sad old, oh goodness, do we really need another rubbish stunty race faces? Aren't we wrong? Or am I reading you wrong? Are you excited too?
Actually, I kind of am. At first, was like, what the hell? Because nobody was expecting like a gnome team. At least I was, and nobody I spoke to was. But yeah, okay. I mean, it's another thing in the mix that they have nice minis. So I think the trickster rule is quite funny.
Despite rule spam.
Yes, that's a different thing there, but yeah. Still, I see the appeal of that. Maybe they're trying to get a bit more like back to the origins of Blood Bowl, where it's more a bit silly and just a lot of things can happen. If it's good or bad, we will see. But at least for gnomes, I wasn't like super appalled. It was like, yes, can be fun, can be interesting. Maybe some new mechanic in a team that's definitely not super overpowered. So
using my
why
admin
not?
status, or abusing my admin status, I've had a little peek at some of the online entrance for the next NAF event on Fumble. And it seems that gnomes are, I would say, surprisingly, just dumping dodge on as many gnomes as possible.
Guilty as charged.
Is that what you would have expected people to do?
I did. So yeah.
I played against gnomes captained by Rolex in Malta, dodge spam, and heck of a game. A few ropey dice, but actually they were almost impossible for me to get a hold of. And when I did roll a POW, 4-1 popped up quite a lot.
Hargrim, how do you feel about the little tiny things? I mean,
so
and I don't just mean
I'm going to get to my
gnomes.
opinion after
Okay.
I come with some data.
Right.
We just had the Danish Open last weekend, and there were 2 gnome coaches. One of them brought No Star, and the other brought Grombrindle, the white dwarf.
Now people have been talking that up to me.
It's pretty strong considering it came 9th out of 53.
Okay.
I mean, I think he's a solid player on his own, and that's
he's
something
pretty
that
good.
could use another big, strong thing to keep the gnomes safe. So that's probably a good idea.
He's pretty good. He can give you Dauntless, so you can get a 1D on the ball with a 3+ with dodge.
That's nice.
You've also got dodge on your guard Beastmaster. Now you've got a 3-up dodge rerollable into the cage. Now you're making it 2 dice. Look at the ball. It's on the floor.
So the Dauntless
I have
is the real
foxes.
Because his other ones are Sure Feet, aren't they?
Sure Feet is another one you can give. You can also give Break Tackle.
Firm. Oh no, Break Tackle.
And Mighty Blow.
And Mighty Blow. I'm not sure Break Tackle is a load of use.
It can be of some use in certain cases. In any case,
presumably it gives you a single 1 in 36 dodge on one of your gnomes, so that might be okay.
Yeah.
I can't see Mighty Blow being all that useful. And Sure Feet, I mean, maybe they are quite slow. There might be times I'd grab that, but surely it's the Dauntless, isn't it?
It's the Dauntless you take it for.
Okay.
So my opinion on the gnomes is they seem like an immensely fun team to play, and nothing else really matters to me.
Right.
I'm
so
a competitively fun is always good. When it comes to the competitive scene, we need to be careful with where we tier them, because I think they are by far the strongest stunty team there is.
Interesting. I know some.
And they have good star access.
Hold my beer.
Yeah. I think we need to be careful with the gnomes with tiering, and we tiered them very carefully for the Danish Open. Or, well, I shouldn't say we, I didn't organize it.
And yet still they came, and still they were strong.
Still they came, still they were strong.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess, again, as with many new teams, people will have to learn how to play against them because they're not used to wrestle spam stunties.
The famous silent majority of Blood Bowl. People will learn again. It's one of my 2 favourite things. People will learn against them, or yes, but they're mostly coached by new players, because both of which are really hard to prove, but sound like the sort of thing that should be true. People will learn to coach against them. We should be really careful of, because vampires, of course, people will learn how to coach against them, but people already knew how to coach against vampires. So my prediction, and I think this is coming true, is people know how to coach against them. People will learn how to coach them better with their changes. So I thought from the start, actually, vampires is one that will come in and I think get stronger as people learn how to use them well. Then maybe some strategies will develop into how to counter that. But I think in terms of, deny them their thralls, try and suck the rerolls out early, we already knew how to do that. So I always thought vampires would get better. Gnomes, maybe you're right. Perhaps what we'll learn there is how to counter them. But perhaps also people will learn how to exploit them. I mean, I can see it going either way at this point.
Both things will happen. The question is what will happen more or more effective.
Right.
We will see.
See, that's a safer message because we can't be wrong.
It's too early to tell. Ultimately, I think anybody that's got a strong opinion one way or the other on them, it's just too early days. I faced them once. It was Rog Spam. It was a hard match. Obviously, Rolex, one of the best coaches in the world as well, doesn't help.
Yeah.
But it was a tricky game. It didn't feel like I was playing a bunch of flings or a bunch of goblins that were just going to explode. It was like, how on earth do I break this down? With 4 guard, all Rog. It was a tough game.
And the Foxes are, of course, good boys.
Yeah.
They are the best boys.
They are absolutely. You can stick your werewolves up Andy Davo's ass. I'll take a fox any day of the week. It's just me. I mean, also, your mileage may vary. You might not want to enjoy that. Now, I've been building up round to what I said I was going to come to, which is ultimately I am coming back to tabletop. So we're going to end with advice for PC. Now, some of it isn't going to be new to me. I know how to roll dice. I know how to psych somebody out. I know how to kick them under the table, and that when their back's turned, I can move players. I mean, all the basics are there for me. And obviously, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. I can do all this good stuff. I can hand plop. But what's moved on in the meta with things? Is tackle now everywhere? When I left Blood Bowl 6 months ago, there were so many dodgy things around. And since then, we've had the rise of Amazons and the arrival of gnomes. Do I need to make sure I've got tackle? It used to be that in 2016, it was, do you take a tackle 50-50? You maybe take a frenzy. I was getting to the point where I always had a tackle. Is that still the case? Should I be building with tackles? What do you think?
I think it
I'm more-
depends.
Okay.
Go on, Jock.
No, you go first.
Okay. I think it depends on a few things. The first thing it depends on is, are you playing a team tournament? Because if you're playing a team tournament, you need to measure and gauge what race are you playing and what are you expecting to meet depending on that race. So my go-to example is, if you're playing orcs, are you expecting to be playing table 1? Probably not. You're probably expecting to be mid-tables, settling for a lot of draws, which means you're going to be playing other mid-table teams, in which case tackle, probably not necessary. You can probably get away with having a mighty blow or an extra guard somewhere. If you're expecting to play top tables, I would suggest you need either a wrestle or a tackle, depending on what team you're playing. And currently, I think the two best teams are Skaven and Dark Elves. Dark Elves have both frenzy and wrestle, especially with the way that you build them normally. So you're settled. You can pop the ball at the critical moments you need it to.
Yeah, but I've done Dark Elves, and I've been there, done that, proved it, man. So I'm looking to move on. Looking to do something new, innit? Looking to surprise people. Maybe do something people don't expect, like coach dwarves. I don't know. In my heart, I'm still an elf coach, but I don't know. I'm not hearing the Dark Elves. I know what I'm doing there. CJ, do I need tackle? What's new, man? What's the hot to trot in 24?
I would say before the Underworld nerf, I was saying definitely yes, at least on most teams. I mean, Hargrim's point is valid that it might vary on the team tournament, and especially it varies about what team you have, what you have at your disposal, how many skills you can give, and what do you need. But there's so many, as Amazon's Underworld, Dark Elf, Wood Elf stuff around with Dodge, where the one tackler is usually very, very useful. Now with the drop in Underworld, maybe not that much anymore, but I still would say yes.
So up at the top end of the meta, lots of things are dodging. If I want to take them on, I'm going to need tackle.
Yes, or at least for there will be one or two key players in most teams that have dodge or blodge or something, and just to have this threat there, just to make sure to keep them on the toes, have that guy around, and just be present. I think that's viable if your skill quota allows for it.
So, Jock, this is my question that's hiddenly trying to do exactly what Christian's just done for me, which is lay me out the entire meta under the hidden, quite intense and quite probing question of, do I need tackle?
No. I'm a wrestle man. I think wrestle just has far more utility. It doesn't quite obviously create the same damage output in terms of bringing a person down, but the idea of being able to open up channels, still sacking the ball on the kind of same odds. I'm wrestle all day. But then I come at it from a dark elf main position, and I'll just put wrestle on my witches and say thanks very much.
Yes, as a dark elf with 2 frenzy and some wrestle there, then you're usually kind of set. Most of the time, you're quick enough. You don't really need to prevent people from going through. I'm used to playing Necros a lot lately, or Undead, and then I want my attacker somewhere, and just okay, I've got you down on your rerolls. You can't afford to reroll much more. I'm putting the tackler in to make sure your dodge guy has to roll something. So that's different aspect for me.
So, Hargrim, whilst these two old men do disagree on their methodology, both of them are basically essentially solving the problem of, up at the top end of a tourney, I'm going to be facing dodgy things.
Yeah.
Now, I can't think of another analogy where there's two very well-known and accepted methods that people use all the time, and a third, somewhat newer, somewhat lesser-known method that perhaps isn't as common or perhaps a little weird to people. I can't think of another way of expressing that at all. So let's just move on without doing so. Is there an anal to dealing with Rog? Oh shit, that leaked. Damn. Is there a third way to dealing with Rog? Is there, for example, Troll Vomit? Is that good enough? Do I need to have either wrestle or tackle?
Again, it depends heavily on what race you want to play. I would say if you're playing singles and the rules pack allows it, as in for how many skills you get, and the race you're playing is going to have a difficult time dealing with them, yes, you need a tackle. Because the tackle is going to generate enough threat value that it's going to cause
But if
problems
I say
to the
got
opponent.
orcs, I've got a troll. He can vomit on blodgers.
The vomit just isn't good enough. It's a 42% chance to knock down and stun against AD7, which just isn't. It's not very good, is it?
Yeah,
Nope.
I think the same about backdoor action. Frankly, it's just not
I
quite.
mean,
not quite good
as
enough.
Hammers kind of points out in the conversation, big jugs. You know,
Yeah,
that
big
will sort
jugs.
out
Big jugs is the
Rog.
answer. Okay. There's two tournaments coming up after the home nations. Now, home nations I'm sorted for. I'm not going to talk exactly about what I'm taking yet because it's a big secret.
Until I release it.
Yeah, I mean it isn't actually. I couldn't care less. But there's two coming up after that. One of which I want to be competitive at, and I've got pretty much free choice, which is odd ways. I'm going to the Euro Open, and I'm in a team of completely random people. One of which, weirdly and most randomly, because sometimes random things should be so random that they kind of don't feel random. I'm in a team with Mina, who was the Martian who came on one of the team fumbles on the Euro Open. So I've been put with three random people, one of whom I know. So that's proper random. And the other one of which is a Greek coach and an Italian coach who I don't know very well. Looking at their track records, they're not the most experienced tabletoppers, any of the three of them. So I'm genuinely going just to have some fun. One of them has bagged Underworld and one of the best inducements, so I'm not going to get an inducement. We've used them all on the other people's. But I can be pretty much any race I choose. And as it doesn't matter if I win or lose as far as the other people, I can be just competitive for me. What team should I be looking at? It can't be Underworld. They've just been nerfed anyway, but they're gone. What team should I take to be looking at for competitive? Whilst you mull that one, the yin to my yang. I'm going to Thrud Bowl this year. I've got a ticket. I'm very excited. I'm going to have almost no fun because I'm camping. So most of my worries and concerns are going to be about an old man who isn't very good at things that involve sort of physical activity, camping for the first time in 20 odd years. So therefore, I don't really care about the Blood Bowl. I'm there going just to have a laugh. I don't even necessarily want to be competitive. I can coach any race I want. So some of the races I really enjoy but rarely get to take if I'm trying to be competitive are, say, Chaos Dwarf, High Elf, that sort of thing. So what should I take to Thrud? What should I take to Europe? What should I be trying to grind some competitive ha-has and laughing at Team England as they fall apart? And then what should I take just to have a laugh and not care because I probably won't be sleeping that night? Who wants to start? What's my Thrud Bowl team? What do I take to Europe? Hargrim.
I'll start off with so for Thrud Ball, I'll be reffing, so I think you should definitely have as much fun as you could possibly have.
That's what I want to do.
Which means play High Elves. They are so much fun.
Now, the lovely Hugo is painting me some lovely High Elves, so that would be a good thing.
I played High Elves all of 2022, and I loved every single game of playing High Elves. They are probably my favorite race to play, and I just think they're so much fun. So for Thrud, definitely play High Elves.
Okay, and then what do I take to the Europen?
For the Europen, I would probably, if you want to be competitive for yourself, I would probably say Amazons, because they are so unbelievably strong at the moment that
Oh, I like the sound of that.
They have a few tough matchups, but those matchups are not unwinnable. it's like it's one of those cases where you just need to be better than your opponent, and then you win the matchup anyways.
Okay, that sounds like some good, solid, and very, very concise advice. I like that about you. Jock, you're not expected to be next, so you're going to be. What's your advice?
Fair
What do I
enough.
take to the Euro Open? What do I coach at Thrud?
Yeah, I'll go in reverse. So with lessons already chosen, and because of what you play as a coach, I'd say Dark Elves for Euro Open. If you're going there to try and get some results in for yourself and for the team, a vanilla Dark Elves with your build, bosh, done. Simple. I can't see past that for you ultimately. For Thruds, I would probably echo Hargrim with High Elves because I'm taking High Elves to Thrud. But if you were to kind of look at the other side of the coin, maybe a Corn for a bit of fun. If you're going for out and out fun, take all that strength 4 frenzy and have a blast. But yeah, I mean, as I said, I've just come back from playing High Elves in Malta. I loved them. I played High Elves at Thrud 2 years ago when the rule pack was kind. Last year it wasn't. It was more tier 1 meta orientated. So I went back to Dark Elves. I always judge a rule pack by, can I take High Elves instead of Dark Elves this weekend? And if the answer is yes, I love the rule pack in that sense, because I think one of the key things for having a good time at a tournament is race diversity. Can I play 6 different races over the course of the weekend? If the answer is yes, that's a great tournament for me. Forget the results. The idea
And
that
to
you
be
get to play
part of
different
that as
races.
well, to be taking something that won't be 1,000 of them there.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, High Elves, if you were kind of on the sort of elfy stuff, I love it. I'm taking them myself. I think they'll be a lot of fun.
I do like to elf, this is known.
Yeah, I think I'm itching myself. I've not yet got the models, but I think Corn would be fun as well. Like if you're more bothered about how on earth does your old man back stand up to camping, and I have already conceded and booked a B&B around the corner, so there's still time.
I've got a car, Jock.
Yeah, well there you are. Although you say that, you can't because you get locked in. So I made that mistake my first year. I didn't get all my stuff out, and I had a sleeping bag and pretty much nothing else, and realised that actually I'd spent too long chatting in the camping ground, not getting my camping gear out, and so I had a very uncomfortable
Well,
night's
talk
sleep
about this
with just a
this
sleeping
B&B
bag.
you've booked. Well, to see what that's about. That's
So yeah, there's my 2. High Elves or Corn for Thrud. That's what I'd say.
Christian, what should I do? What should I be taking to these places?
Well, the obvious choices have already been said, but for Europe, if you want like competitive and just for the result, then Skaven is still a very good team, very solid. For Thrud, if you say you don't care about the Blood Bowl, you want to have fun, do silly, funny things, Goblins.
See, I do like the Goblin.
Chainsaw, kneecap, vomit on somebody. Have you accurate or passing bomber now? Enjoy this.
Yeah,
This
they've
is
got all
fun.
sorts of silly stars at Thrud you can
Yes,
take.
yes. It's if you say you don't care about the result, or alternative Slan.
I mean, I
Just
say I don't care, but you know me. The minute I sit down with Blood Bowl in front of me, I'm going to be Andy Davo last year who won Thrud, and I'm going to try and do my best, aren't I? Because
well, then if you want fun plus competitiveness, then maybe Slan is something for you.
I haven't ever slammed at a tournament actually. I mean, I've got some Cossacks specifically so that I can be Norse or humans or Slan. So perhaps I should get my Cossacks a jumping. Interesting. I'll have a look. And what do I take when I just want to be ridiculously ruinous and win things? What am I taking to Euro Bowl?
Yeah, I mean, the Dark Elves is probably one of your best choices there. They're still one of the top teams, in my opinion.
Have to see what the others want. I always promised them they could have first pick. Interesting stuff, guys. Now, at the very start of the evening, I put a thesis forward. So, at the any other bits you want to add in, I want to remind you of what that is and see if there's anything you want to say before we wrap up. I think we sort of explained what I meant by the title, so I think it's perhaps a bit less challenging now. We are almost accidentally living through a Blood Bowl golden age. The numbers have never been higher. There's an enormous numbers of new people coming into this hobby that we love. At times I can't quite think why. I know it's a good game that I love, but it's been a good game that I love for a long time, and that hasn't seemed to bring the numbers in. we don't really have a working computer game version that's really hot property and exciting people at the moment. And yet the numbers keep going up. So what haven't we talked about in the context of that in terms of taking advantage of it, appreciating it, understanding it, and using it? What do you want to say as we say good night at the very end of One World, One Blood Bowl, number 48? We will start, so let's start with the lovely Jock.
Knew you were going to come to me. I think Hargrim kind of picked up on it earlier in the show, in that we seem to be doing something right and keep doing it. I mean, I guess the question is what is that? I think keep appealing to new coaches in ways that interest them, speak to them, find out. I think one thing we've not necessarily touched upon and briefly touched upon with Space Cadet in chat is about how we look after leagues and how we transition coaches from leagues into tournament play. I mean, one of the things that's interesting, I play in the York Blood Bowl League, right on the doorstep of UKTC, and there are a number of coaches there who are reticent about coming to UKTC because they have a misconception of how toxic it could well be, and it's certainly not what I've found in my experience. But then, obviously, I'm a competitive soul and I don't mind that. But yeah, I'm really trying to work on them to say, look, don't worry about it. You know, if you're not at the competitive end of the spectrum, it's not a problem. You'll have fun. So I think it's about, you touched on it as well, is how do we look after that bottom end, because everything else will feed into it ultimately. And keep imagining new opportunities. I mean, the home nations for me was a silly idea that had a conversation with KFOG, and suddenly I've got coaches that are coming across the Atlantic. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So I think I'd encourage viewers to keep thinking about Blood Bowl in terms of what could they do to support Blood Bowl. You know, UKTC is about to undergo changes, and there's people stepping forward there as well. So I think it's on all of us as part of the community to step forward where we can, in what ways we can, ultimately.
And interestingly, that's a fabulous segue into what we're doing next. As I said, One Blood World, One Blood Bowl. Number 49 is going to come at you with the stories of 3 young men and how they've done exactly that, how they've moved into Blood Bowl, where it's taken them, what those opportunities have meant. And just very different stories as to how the hobby has taken them and where it's taken them, which I think is going to be really interesting, because it's not just about playing Blood Bowl. It never is. There's all sorts else to being involved with Blood Bowl or in Blood Bowl, or it doesn't have to be. You can just do that. You can just play the Blood Bowl. We're going to do the same thing and go diagonally. Hargrim, what do you want to say at the very end? How do you want to wrap up?
So I very much agree with what Jock says. It's a question of, like, what is it exactly that we're doing wrong? And I'm going to use an example from Tulane Team Cup, actually. They obviously have, like, regional leagues. They have the Bologna League, they have the Florence League, they have the Milan League. And what they did at the Tulane Team Cup was that internally, within these leagues, they sent several squads. And the best placed squad from each league got a prize. And that's sort of a way of keeping it running within these, like, small local leagues, that there is a competitive nature inside them, and we'll grow them through not only just the league management, but we'll say, like, hey, we're all going to this event, do you want to come as well, so that you maybe can win a prize of some sort. And I think methodology like that is an amazing way of keeping the community alive and bringing new people in as the game expands naturally from what it is we're doing.
Yeah, I think that's really important. It worries me sometimes that we do the standard joke about the toxic elite and One World, One Blood Bowl, which, for those that aren't in on the joke, it's been a while since we recapped it. I made one joke about the Bonehead podcast people I like a lot, and I think have a great niche within Blood Bowl. But they're very much the mass market, and some of the advice is perhaps not fantastic tactically, but it's a great place to start. There's always lots of it, lots of advice out there that you can grab, and it gets you going on anything that they talk about. I made one joke, and someone in their server called me Toxic Elite. Said this show and anyone involved in it, which is just me, is, and the other part of Toxic Elite was anyone involved running Fumble, which I'm an admin. So basically, on the 3 points they made for Toxic Elite, all 3 were me. So we sort of leaned into that and laughed about it, but if you're watching this show, then probably I'm not totally distasteful to you. And if I'm the worst thing in Blood Bowl, that'll show you the sort of welcome you're going to get from people at a tournament. It's people you can talk to. It's people, everyone walks up to me and says, I've seen the podcast and talks to me. And I talk back, that's who I am. And so does everyone else at tournaments. We talk about them being competitive. That doesn't mean it's just for the people that want to rinse hard and win everything. It's competitive in that people turn up to try and compete. But it doesn't mean that people are all great. At every tournament, there's some people that are terrible, but they still have a great time. Because it's about that environment. It's not necessarily about always the winning. Anything else you wanted to bring in, Hargrim?
Other than shameless self-promotion of
Do
my
it.
tabletop tournament in the last weekend of August, first weekend of September, so 31st of August, 1st of September,
It's
we're
called.
hosting the Copenhagen Pier Bowl. It's a 2-man, 2-day squad tournament centered at the pier in
Do you have
Copenhagen.
2 peers? Is that why it's 2 people?
Yes. No, we've got this like nice little basin area where you can jump into the water during
Okay.
rounds.
No, I only ask
If
because
you-
Brighton is doing the Brighton Piers, because Brighton has 2 piers. And they're doing a pairs called the Piers, because there's a pair of piers. I wondered
Smart.
if you were doing the same thing or if it was just a name you picked.
It's just a name we picked because we
Good.
wanted a pirate theme and
Good. Should have checked
wanted
that
people to
before
jump
this
into the
bit, shouldn't
water.
we?
Yeah.
Excellent. And so people can still get tickets, or are you sold out?
People can still get tickets, yes. And it's in Copenhagen, and if it helps, I give free tours of the city during the Friday.
Wonderful.
And there will be a Friday night social.
Wonderful. Copenhagen. Christian, Candlejack, Blood Bowl is in an accidental golden age. None of us realise it, and we're not doing enough about it. Any final points before we finish?
First off, I want to say thank you to Hargrim for I think putting yourself out there by in such a public forum stating about your non-standard sexuality is very brave. This is much appreciated. And
I saw it as blatant advertising, but okay, to each their own.
Shameless self-promotion.
Yeah.
it could be both. It could be both. Now, still, I think it's important that people feel safe enough
Yeah.
about to talk about stuff like this. And this leads me to the point of diversity. I think it's great that we are now talking about diversity. As we see on this panel, we don't really have it that much yet. I hope it gets more. And we should all be more welcoming to non-standard white male cis fatty asshole people.
Yeah. I mean, I can make a joke. I mean, I did know about Hargrims. We talked about that before, but it's not a visible diversity, which is a whole different thing.
Yeah. Yes.
We could joke about you being ginger-haired being diverse, and in some ways it is. But we're obviously saying there are areas where, in terms of ethnicity and gender, or the explicitly displayed gender, Blood Bowl is not as
Yes.
as representative of the statistics of humanity as I'm sure most of us would like it to be. But I also understand that as that change happens, or as if people want to move in that direction, that's still going to leave some people who, as I said, considered this a safe space where they didn't have to think about that or worry about that, to be something they were happy with. Now, I will defend moving and making them unhappy. But I still, the empathy in me still wants them to understand and come with us, not be left behind. I guess that's all I want to say about that.
And different point, to get more people in, we talked about a lot of things, but most of those were like what to do if people already show up at a tournament, already show interest in the game, which are important. But the step before, I think there's sort of I think all the streamers help a lot. Just people stumble across them, see, hey, there's a nice game.
Yeah.
It looks interesting. Some that's when they fumble, like old school ASCII art stuff, but people would associate with it it looks fun. Or see BB3, that looks nice graphics, some splatters there, and I think it's good to have people, get attention to the game and just increase the base of people who have a glimpse and then maybe get sucked into the game. But there's a point. Jock before said that he wishes a new rule set would get more rule changes and stuff. Personally, I hope not, because of Blood Bowl 3. Because if a 2024 rule set comes out with some core changes, Blood Bowl 3 will not be able to keep up.
Yeah.
And that would be bad for the coherence of the Blood Bowl ecosystem. I'm pretty sure Fumble we will adopt in some way.
Yeah.
I will
agree.
definitely do that. But Blood Bowl 3 they're so behind already with implementing everything. I mean, they're doing good stuff now. You can do enough games now there with predefined skill sets and stuff. So they're catching up. But if Games Workshop now moves their target to something
I mean, because it makes
of
perfect
scale,
sense, I suspect Games Workshop will
or
do an entirely new, completely different rule set with everything changed. But I'd agree with you. I think let's tweak things. Let's get it all nice and in the right way. Let's get it organised. Let's bed in what is there as well as it can be,
yeah,
whilst perhaps
I
getting
hope
rid of some of the worst aspects of it, like
yeah,
perhaps the prayers to Nuffle can go. I'm not sure anyone would miss them. That
we'll
wouldn't be
see.
that wouldn't be a huge change, really
Yeah,
codable into Blood Bowl 3 and things,
yeah.
but
But
nothing
it would
perhaps major and structural. Um,
be,
and I think I kind of just want to say, in terms of the numbers, just the raw numbers, this is an opportunity. This is Blood Bowl's golden age. If you play a game like Civilization, I'm sure if you play Blood Bowl, you probably do. In a golden age, you try and take advantage. It's the time to really pile in and either get something built or get something done or take on a new territory. And the same is true now. So if you've ever thought of running a tournament, there's never been a better time to try and find a space in the calendar and get it going. If you've ever wanted to, try going to tournaments but you never have, there's never been a better time with more new people turning up than there's ever been before. If you wanted to get involved in running something, I mean, the Blood Bowl Southeast server went from non-existent to a major hub for 100 people who play Blood Bowl in a matter of 3 weeks because one person decided to build it. And instantly it became somewhere that a lot of people thought, well, hang on, this is now going to be the centre of what I do in Blood Bowl. So there's an opportunity out there for all sorts of us in all sorts of ways. Maybe not for streaming Blood Bowl 3, but maybe if that's your thing, for that. But Blood Bowl is having a moment. Exactly what that means, I'm not sure. But I guess that's where I wanted us to go tonight. That's been easily as much time as you should have got out of a One World, One Blood Bowl. It's been a bit freeform, but hey, it's the third of three where I'm talking about coming back to Blood Bowl. Like I said, next time we're going to talk to some very specific people about some very specific things in their Blood Bowl in their lives. But for now, that was One World, One Blood Bowl, number 48. If everyone can wave and say goodbye, helps me find it in the edit.
Bye
Thank you all for
now.
coming.
All right, cheerio.
Speak to you real soon. Okay, so I mean we can chat on a bit, but I'll see